There we go. Awesome. Sweet. Well, we got just a little less than a minute here. So I'll just say hi to everybody that's joining us already. Thanks for coming on this. Well, at least in the Madison area right now, it's a pretty rainy Wednesday, but we do need the rain. So, all right, well, I have noon now, so I'm going to say hi. My name is Allison Madison, and I'm the program manager at Wisconsin Saltwise. And every month, for those of you who've been joining us for a while, you know that we put together webinars on a variety of topics that all revolve around salt use and salt use reduction and solutions and what's happening out there in the field. So today, very excited to have Laura Herrick here with me. She's the Chief Environmental Engineer with SEWRPC, as you can see on her name title there, SEWRPC, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. And on my name title, you see the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. So we're kind of in sister agencies right now in different parts of the state. But just double checking, we had a little error button come up, but I think we're good again. So yeah, without further ado, then I'm just gonna hand it right off to Laura so she can dive into the work that SEWRPC has been doing monitoring chloride in southeastern Wisconsin streams. And then at the end, we'll open it up for questions. So if you have any questions during Laura's presentation, feel free to type those into the chat. And if the chat feature doesn't work, you can always email me at wisaltwise@gmail.com. And then we'll take it from there.
All right, thank you, Allison. I'll share my screen. Okay, so hopefully that looks good. Fantastic. Again, Laura Herrick, Chief Environmental Engineer at the Regional Planning Commission. I'm going to just dive right in and talk about our Chloride Impact Study. So here's the agenda for today. So I'm going to give you a brief background of who we are as the Regional Planning Commission, jump into our study scope, spend quite a bit of time on the field monitoring work we have completed, and then talk about some analyses we have begun and then next steps for the study. So a little bit about the Regional Planning Commission. We handle the 7 counties in southeastern Wisconsin. They're shown here on the MIT, the Wisconsin MIT. So we're just north of Chicago. We include the cities of Milwaukee, Kenosha, Racine, Waukesha, West Bend, and others. So, but what's interesting is we're 5% of the state by area, but 35% of the state by population. And I think that's important for our work related to chlorides. We are the official area-wide public planning agency. So we do larger studies, larger regional work. We were created in 1960 under state legislation. And for this effort, what's really important is the second bullet. We are also the state designated area-wide water quality management planning agency. You can see we do a lot more than water quality work. We do transportation work, flooding, parks and open space. For our region is shown on the right here, our 7 counties and all the communities, cities, villages, and towns in the region. So that was the super cliff notes of our background. I'm going to jump into the study scope for the chloride study. It actually came out of a question from one of our commissioners, and it took a couple of years to develop the scope and the funding. So we worked on a prospectus for this work from 2014 to 2016. That was with the help of our technical advisory committee, and that included a variety of folks across all the interests of chloride, public works staff, WSDOT, Federal Highways, the Wisconsin DNR, USGS, I could go on. It was a great TAC, and they put a lot of effort into what our scope would be. The funding, the total original budget for this project was $1.7 million. So it was a significant funding we needed. And I wanted to give a kudos to our funding sources, the Federal Highway Administration, Fund for Lake Michigan, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, and the DNR, as well as ourselves. So again, this is super short and sweet, but our study scope included. The map on the right is the major watersheds in our region, shown by color. And the darker line kind of running north to south through the region is the subcontinental divide. So everything to the right drains to Lake Michigan, and everything to the left drains to the Mississippi River. So that's another complication or interest. Well, it's really important for us in that everything to the left in the Mississippi River watershed is on groundwater for drinking water sources. And that comes into play with water softening, which I'll talk more about. But for the study scope, we were tasked with gathering conductance data for up to 40 stream locations and 6 lakes in the region. And then also compile existing data on chloride levels, going hopefully further back in time than just what we took for our study, to see those trends over time of what chloride is doing in all our water resources, surface water and groundwater. Our plan is to develop, we're working on that right now, developing relationships between conductance and chloride levels. And then with another goal of estimating chloride loads from all sources for the study period. So the goal there would be at each of our stream locations to look at the contributing watershed and try to figure out how much of that is truly public de-icing, how much of that is private de-icing, what's coming from water softeners, what's coming from agricultural fertilizer. And I'll talk a little bit more about those sources a little later on. We also hope to look at future conditions, both from a land use change perspective. We are not a rapidly growing region, but we are growing, and we expect a more impervious surface over time and more roads, as well as how climate may impact, especially our winters. And actually, we're seeing it right now. We're in a pretty good drought right now in our part of the country, and how that might impact those changes in both our winters. Are our winters going to be less snow and more freezing rain, or more rain? How's that going to potentially impact de-icing operations in our part of the country? And then our final task piece is to gather state-of-the-art information for all those sources of chloride and how we can really reduce what we contribute to the environment. So this group is probably pretty familiar with what chloride is, so I won't go into everything, but probably for us, the 4th bullet, it's very soluble and it's very mobile. Once it's in water, it tends to want to move with the water. That's very important for our work, as well as it's really difficult to remove from the environment. Once it is there, it's probably going to end up in our surface waters or in our deep aquifers is ultimate sinks for chloride in our part of the country. And it's very problematic at high concentrations. So this is all the major sources of chloride to the environment listed along here. We're predominantly focusing obviously on road salt applications and private salting. Water softening is a potential big contributor in our region. And that kind of translates to what the wastewater treatment plants are discharging, as well as agricultural fertilizers are probably the big ones. We do have some chemical manufacturing and food processing in our region as well that we will look at. So I just wanted to throw out a little bit about the criteria we're using for the study. This is the chronic and acute levels in our surface waters. And we're going to be using the Wisconsin levels, so the 395 milligrams per liter chronic toxicity level and the 757 milligrams per liter acute level. And, chronic is for long-term exposures and acute is short-term exposure, seeing detriments to our organisms in our streams and lakes. Also wanted to mention the EPA drinking standard of 250 milligrams per liter, where you start to experience a salty taste. That's going to come into play with one of our lakes. We're starting to see one of our natural lakes approaching that level. All right, enough on the study scope and a little bit of background. I want to spend quite a bit of time on the monitoring effort. So again, this is our 7-county region, and you can actually see, if you don't see a straight border, some of the study area extends beyond our region as well. Most of that is in the green. That's the Milwaukee River watershed. And all of the red dots are our stream monitoring sites. Our office is located in the middle of Waukesha County, which is kind of in one of the western middle counties. So there was a significant amount of driving to maintain this network for 2+ years. And one of our goals was good spread across our counties, also good distribution across our various watersheds, which are shown here with the various colors as well as good distribution on the right side of the subcontinental divide and the left as well. So significant effort just getting this in place and setting it up. So in total, we had 41 stream monitoring sites, and they were operated and they were conductance sites from October 2018 to extending into 2021, we actually grabbed a third winter to gather a little bit more data. So we did continuous monitoring for specific conductivity, water temperature, and water depth. And we gathered data every 5 minutes because we wanted to make sure we caught some of the quicker peaks on some of our streams. So the lower left photo shows our above ground unit, which was great. It shot it up to the cloud, and we could actually watch all the sites in real time at the office, which was wonderful for maintaining the sites and for knowing if we had issues like battery issues or burial or movement or anything like that. To the right is the continuation. So the cable from the above ground unit was put in a plastic protective casing and run along the edge of the stream, held down by cinder blocks. You can see it in the right-hand photo to our unit, which is zip tied to the top of another cinder block. It was protected in a PVC casing. And we wanted it up a little bit off the bottom because we have quite a few silty streams in our region. So that was part of the reason for getting it up off the bottom. And this worked really well. I give a super kudos to all the field crew and staff. This survived the winters, which we were really thrilled about. We did not have winter data, winter conductance data really anywhere in our region. So talking a little bit more, we also did monthly grab sampling. So here we are measuring conductance in the streams, but we really want to know the chloride levels. So we did also do monthly grab samples, as well as some event sampling as well, where we watched conductance and went out when conductance levels were high. Those grab samples were sent to the State Lab of Hygiene and measured for all the constituents shown here, including chloride and the major anions and cations and hardness. So that was a significant effort as well, doing monthly grab sampling at 41 sites. I just wanted to talk a little bit about maintenance of that equipment. You can see here, we definitely learned a lot. The equipment was pretty much left in the field and cleaned in spring and fall. So we didn't want to disturb it too much, but you can see some of the fouling we had. Lower left is actually the conductance, the CTD, as we called it. That small hole just to the right of the little worm is the opening for the conductance sensor, and you can see how fouled it is. And so Nick is shown in the upper right, who's he kind of led the field effort, and there he's checking the depth sensor to make sure once it was cleaned how it was doing. And then in the lower right, we also, once the unit was clean, we checked it in the field with a handheld sonde as well to make sure it was measuring what we thought it should be measuring. So that was a huge effort as well to keep this equipment in place and operating. So I just want to show you what some of the data looked like. This is at the Fox River at Waukesha. So it's kind of at the northern end of the Fox River watershed. And what we have in green is the specific conductance we measured at the unit. That's the left y-axis. This is for time. So this is the entire monitoring period from October 2018 to December 2020. And then in black, the black triangles are the actual grab samples for chloride, and that's got the axis on the right side. So you can see here, and we also show the chronic toxicity level as the horizontal red line as well, to show this is not, it's most of the time it's staying below the chronic toxicity level, except in the winter of 2019. And we did have a couple of grab samples showing we were higher. And just to give you a feel for what that contributing drainage area looked like, this is something we have a lot of good data on as the Regional Planning Commission, is the land use. So this is, the site is shown as the blue star, kind of in the southern middle of the watershed, and everything north or above that point is the contributing drainage area to that particular Fox River site at Waukesha. And you can see I have the top 3 land uses shown along the left edge. So the lower density residential is the largest, the yellow color at 19% of the contributing drainage area, then wetlands, and then roads and parking lots. So I wouldn't call this a super urban, contributing drainage area, but it's interesting. It does have Pewaukee Lake. You can see the large lake upstream of it as well, which may be influencing what we see at this monitoring site. Wanted to show you the entire grab sample data set. That's what's shown here. So this is a specific conductance along the x-axis and the grab sample chloride level and milligrams per liter along the y-axis. And this is our entire data set. This is over 1,000 grab samples for the study period. And you can see we have the acute toxicity level shown there as the horizontal orange line. And predominantly our measurements were below that acute toxicity, but you can see quite a bit above. And actually the third winter was used to work on getting more data points in this upper realm. And it's a little sad that we see levels above 40, our highest data point was above 4,500 milligrams per liter. That's very, very high. Showing that data in a little different way. This is that same data set broken out into rural contributing drainage areas to the left and urban contributing drainage areas to the right. And this is our first cut at this. We are continuing to work through this right now, but you can see definitely the rural sites had the lower concentrations, which isn't surprising, but it's kind of a neat way to see, yes, that does confirm that some of the rural sites did get above the acute toxicity, but most of those points, those high points, were in the urban contributing watersheds. This is a different way to look at the grab sample data. This is by site. So the different colored dots are the different stream monitoring sites that we had. Again, time along the x-axis and chloride levels along the y. And you can pretty distinctly see our 3 winters. This actually goes through into spring of 2021. And the two highest locations, the green dots, are the Honey Creek in Wauwatosa. That's a very urban watershed, right, a suburb of Milwaukee. And the purple dots are the Lincoln Creek in the city of Milwaukee itself. Again, a very, very urban site as well. But the rest are more reasonable. They tend to be below the acute level for this particular set of data that we wanted to show. Just to show you what the Lincoln Creek, so that's the purple dots on this slide. This is its contributing drainage area. Again, the blue dot, the blue star, is the monitoring site, and everything to the left of it is its contributing drainage area. And as you can see, its high density residential is its highest land use, and then roads and parking lots and government and institutional. So its top 3 are all very impervious land uses. So it's not surprising we saw very, very high levels at this location, especially in winter. So I'm going to switch gears on you and talk a little bit about our lake sampling. We also did sample 6 lakes in the region. They are shown in the map on the right, listed where they are. And we also what we did was quarterly sampling here, and we developed profiles. We were interested to see if chloride-laden water is heavier. So we were interested to see if that was accumulating at the bottom of any of our lakes or impeding fall and spring mixing in any way. Really, we didn't see that. I'll show you a couple of graphs of that, but the Little Muskego levels are starting to be of concern. Little Muskego Lake is basically in the middle of the region. It's got a very urban watershed, and it's a fairly shallow lake. It's starting to approach the 250 milligrams per liter taste threshold, which is concerning. Showing lake data a different way, this is actually from our prospectus, this is another reason we wanted to look at the lakes, is we're seeing a slow creep in chloride levels at all our lakes. So this data goes all the way back to 1960. Again, chloride levels along the y-axis. And you can see everyone is slowly creeping up in their chloride levels. It's pretty consistent across the region. And the top set of data, the red dots and red lines, is that Little Muskego Lake data. So looking at a couple of profiles, this is the quarterly profiles we took at 2 lakes, Moose Lake and Little Muskego Lake. Moose Lake is a fairly small lake. I think it's a landlocked lake, but you can see it was pretty consistent. It's the orange lines here. Oh, and sorry, these graphs are in depth. So the top of the graph would be the water surface, and then going down is below. So these were profiles taken in the spring, summer, fall, and winter of 2019. And these were grab samples. So Moose Lake is not too exciting. It didn't change too much throughout the seasons. And then we have Little Muskego Lake. Again, that's hovering around 200 milligrams per liter pretty consistently. We did see some accumulation, so the higher concentrations at depth, but each year it turned back over. So that isn't impacting Little Muskego Lake yet. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about analyses we're working on right now, and that included both the impacts of chloride. We have a technical report out for that. That's more of a literature review. We're working on the regression analyses right now for getting all this conductance data over to chloride, and I'll show you some preliminary work there, and then talk a little bit about some of the de-icing source data we have found. So as far as the impacts of chloride salts, this is technical report 62, and I'll talk a little bit more about the technical reports in a little bit, but definitely multiple impacts are documented based on, references we could find of both impacts to water. Probably the big one there is the increased acidity. Chloride salts promote the release of heavy metals from a variety of rocks, soil, sediment, and infrastructure. That's of concern. And they also chloride salts also degrade metal and concrete infrastructure. Continuing on, how chloride salts affect organisms is shown here, definitely reduced growth, reproduction, and longevity, and then deformities as well. And then finally, we're working right now on the human health chapter. It's more related to sodium than the chloride piece, but definitely sodium has adverse impacts to us with high blood pressure and osteoporosis, as well as salts in the air contribute to that fine particulates, which are a factor in lung cancer and respiratory diseases. Just wanted to show you, so switching gears, we are finalizing right now the regression analysis piece. So this would be taking you've seen this data before, all the grab sample data, and developing a regression equation. And right now we are working, this is actually what's shown on the screen here is 3 equations, which we are finalizing right now. This will represent 30 of our 41 sites, which we're thrilled with. So a total of over 800 samples are represented by this set of equations. And we're finalizing this right now. We're really close to having it ready to go. And part of the intent of having one equation was both for ease for us and also potentially for future use by other entities that want to take measurements out in the field. So using that equation, we just want to show an example. So again, this is that same Fox River at Waukesha site. The upper graph is the specific conductance data for the entire period of record. And the lower green graph is that conversion to chlorides. So you can see it's topping out at about 800 milligrams per liter for that first winter and about 700 milligrams per liter for that second winter of the data set. Shown a different way, this is the same converted using our regression equations, our draft regression equation. So again, shown in green, but now we have the grab samples. The black triangles are the grab samples taken, actual grab samples taken. So pretty good fit. I see one that's a little bit of a straggler in the middle, but otherwise a very good fit, very good representation of the data. And final bit of analyses I wanted to talk about was we're pretty much done gathering the sources of de-icing data that we can find, the public sources. And those include MS4 reporting, our separate storm sewer system reporting that they have to do for the state. There's also WSDOT storm reporting. So WSDOT has the counties do their de-icing for them on state trunk highways and interstates. So that's another good source of data, which is not included in the MS4 reporting. That's a separate separate set of values. And then we do have the WSDOT salt purchase data as well. And what we've learned is most of our communities, not all, but most go in together with a bid for salt for the entire state, which is really helpful. It's a kind of another way to back calculate from what they report, what they actually have in stock. So I just wanted to show the city of Cudahy is a small suburb of Milwaukee that's really been proactive in both brining and truck calibration, and it really shows up in their purchase data from WSDOT. So we have this going back to 2008, 2009, their tons they purchased each year, and you can really see in 2015, 2016, they started doing brining. That cut down almost in half. And then in 2016, 2017, they also calibrated all their trucks to make sure what they're spreading is what they think they're spreading is what they are actually spreading. So both of those, they've way cut down on their salt purchases, still serving the same. They're a completely developed suburb of Milwaukee, so they're not really adding any more pavement. They've cut their purchase in half. So I'm going to move on to just next steps, and then we can close out for questions. So our next steps, we are going to do a series of reports. They all can be found on the web page you see here at the bottom. And we're going to do a series of technical reports. And right now the red The two shown in red have draft reports already on our webpage, and the green technical report, the legal and policy considerations, is in the works and should be done by the end of 2023. So we're going to do a series of these technical reports written to a more technical audience, and then pull all that together into a planning report, which will be closer to the end of the study, where we're going to pull what we need from those technical reports for a less technical audience, and then look at some alternative scenarios, future conditions, and definitely our recommendations as well. So we definitely have a lot of work left to do. We still have a lot of research and report writing to do, continue with our loading analysis, and continue with the state-of-the-art information gathering. That seems to be a moving target. Everyone's starting to do a lot of brining. And so we're trying to keep up with all that good new work that is happening. So I just want to give a shout out. This has been a huge effort for the commission. This is the list of staff, both retired and some interns in here, but been a very large effort, and I just wanted to shout out to all of our staff, both in my group and Tom Slosky's group, as well as our support staff as well. So with that, I just want to give my contact information here. And again, the webpage for the study is www.SEWRPAC.org/chloride study. And that's all I have. Should I stop sharing?
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Laura. Yep. You can stop sharing. I'm going to just put the link to the study into the chat here for folks. Okay. They're going to be just a minute behind us, but I'm already seeing some questions come in here. So we can start with a question from Paul. And that is, does WSDOT limit / base salt purchase from counties based on previous year's use?
I don't think so. WSDOT would probably know better, but no, I think the communities seemed very consistent in their purchase, but if we had a light winter, they may ask for less.
Yeah, I can speak to that too. Yeah, WSDOT, to my knowledge, does not at all limit what people can purchase. They work with a number of different salt suppliers, so like Morton Salt, Cargill, and then they try to get the best price for every different region of Wisconsin, because getting salt into the city of Milwaukee, right, through the port of Milwaukee is gonna be a little different than getting it to Wausau or Madison. And so the price also varies based on where you are in the state. The average cost per ton of salt has now just surpassed $90. I think it's like $91 for this coming winter, but people need to get their orders in with WSDOT, many months in advance, and then WSDOT goes out and gets those bids. I did have this brings up the one point about Cudahy. You saw, and you kind of pointed out in your graph, Laura, that they had lower purchases when they started brining and they started calibrating, and then there was a little bit of a bump. And my understanding is that's actually when they built a salt shed. And so they wanted to increase their storage capacity. Part of the reason there is if communities are buying salt from WSDOT and then it's sitting at the Port of Milwaukee and they don't use it that winter, they then have to pay a storage fee for that. And so that actually encourages people to just use up the salt that you purchase, so you're not paying to store it. So what Cudahy did was they invested in building a salt shed, so then they had the capacity to like buy more salt, but that way there's no incentive there to use up more salt at the end of the season. So it's a little bit more of the story. And that's true actually for, a number of municipalities. It's like trying to make sure that you have proper storage, not just for like environmental impacts, but to kind of not so that you aren't incentivized to use it up at the end of the season. Okay, I had a question about your lake profile data. Would you mind going back to the slide?
Sure.
I think it was Moose Lake and one other lake. Meanwhile, if other people want to type any questions into the chat for Laura or comments, anything would be great. Always fun to hear from the audience.
I'm gonna go back the slow way. Let's see. All right.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I do really want to bring up for people that the standards that we have right now for chloride are not biologically protective. So we keep seeing those numbers 395, 757, but that's based on lab tests where you just put an organism in some water and increase the salt, right? And see when it dies. So if we look at streams and lakes where organisms are trying to compete, with others of their species, with other species, where temperatures change, where they're trying to get enough food and avoid predation, salt levels as low as 50 milligrams per liter make some pretty significant result in pretty significant changes in the biology of our fresh water. And that's research coming out of Ohio that was published in the last, actually just this last year. So just to note that while we see these numbers of 395 and 757, there are major changes in the biology of the streams well before that. Our standards just haven't caught up. So this is my first time seeing this data, Laura, really exciting. I have a question. It says 2019. So is this May of 2019, but then February of 2022 or 2020?
I'm pretty sure yes. I'm assuming yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then you said it's still, the lake is flipping over. So I guess I'm assuming that like from February until that next May, we'd see kind of like a similar trend. But do you have data for that coming for that spring?
We do.
Okay. It'd be really cool to see that. Like, do we see that happen again then? Because what I'm seeing when I look at this, especially with that little Muskego Lake, right, is we have a lot of inputs of salt throughout the winter, and salt water is heavier than fresh water, right? So that heavy, dense salt water is, hanging out at the bottom of Little Muskego Lake. But then, we're assuming, right, like if there's that natural lake turnover in the spring, that's redistributing the salt more evenly throughout the water column, correct?
Right. Yes. Sorry. Yep. No, it would be good to have one more spring, summer on here to kind of confirm that. I can share that or get it to you later.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd love to have that. And I can send you a follow-up email because I have a couple other things. I'm like, ooh, I want an example of that.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the photos you guys have are great. Really, really interesting to see that kind of gradation there, because it's something that I talk about a lot with people, but I don't actually have much or any study data to share. And I do know that, in Minnesota, they've got one lake that's not turning over anymore. And then up in upstate New York, there are some lakes that no longer flip over because that dense layer of salt water just really inhibits the natural mixing.
And yeah, it's we thought it'd be in their deeper lakes, but actually Little Muskego, it could be because of where it is and its contributing drainage area. It's not as deep as some of our other lakes, but and again, we were trying to do it in the deep hole. I probably should have said that. We tried to go in the deepest part of the lake.
Okay.
To get the data where one was obvious. Sometimes it's not. I don't think Little Muskego had as defined a deep spot, but that's where we were definitely looking at the deep spot in all the lakes.
Cool.
Should I stop sharing or?
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
Good. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I don't have any other questions right now from the audience, but I did put the link to the study into the chat, and you've got shared your email out there. So, oh wait, I lied. We got a comment that just came in here. This is from Joseph. Says there's probably also substantial export of chloride from Little Muskego. You can see it on the time course of lakes that Laura showed. Wind Lake is downstream of Little Muskego. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, Laura, can you speak to, I don't know if that's
that's one of my staff. That's one of my staff, actually. So Joe lives in that area. And that could be really true. It's definitely a very urban lake as well. And there probably are some other things going on that we haven't even thought about yet as far as its interaction with groundwater also. So I think Joe is probably more clarifying, adding a little more background.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, no, it'd be great, especially if I'm going to be talking maybe about this, as an example in the area when talking with practitioners, to get more information, as much information as possible about this lake residence time.
Mhm.
Is huge. All right, well, yeah, I don't have any other questions for you right now, Laura. Not seeing any others pop up in the chat, but this was really excellent. Yeah, it's a good reminder. I want to take a look at your newest chapters that have come out, and yeah, I can't wait to see as more things come up.
All right.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna end our recording here, and then maybe we can just pop on for a minute and chat if that sounds good.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so